Hey, what's up? Hope everyone's doing all right. So we are on week 46. So we got week 46, including this week. We've got 4 more weeks to go. So we've made a lot of progress going through the Bible. Remember, if you read the Bible in about 14 pages, at least it's 14 pages in the King James Version of the Bible that I have, but about a section that you have, and you can split up the sections in about 50 different weeks. You go through the Bible one section every week. You get through the Bible in 50 weeks, and so you start on the second week of the second full week of the year, or the first full week, the second week, but the first full week of the year, and then you read, which is split up in 50 sections. You get through the Bible in 1 year, and you have like a week or two at the ending of the year before you're done. So, and we are on week 46, and so the readings were Romans through 1 Corinthians, and so we just finished Acts last week, and we finished the Gospels, and we finished Acts, and so now we're on the letters. And the first letters is Romans and Corinthians, and so this is, from my understanding, this is Paul writing to the Romans, and this is Paul writing to the Corinthians. These are kind of the longer of the two letters, but I think that they're good as far as like kind of going through kind of the main ideas or the main rules that the church establishes in the very beginning after Christ dies, and then it's formed by the apostles, and then Paul kind of writes the letters to the different areas, kind of regarding the rules that the church has kind of put together. And there's the letters have some more rules and stuff like that, and more expectations and guidance. But First Corinthians and Romans, I think, is kind of like a good start, a good place to start. It's a little bit more. It's a larger section. In my Bible, this is about 16 pages, 16 or 17 pages, I think so. And then Acts we split into two different sections, and so there's only like 10 pages each. And so it's a longer reading. This week is a longer reading than any other week that I have in this outline. But I think it's just kind of important to put these two letters together and kind of read them together. And like I said, it's the beginning of the letters and it's the end of Acts, and so it's like a different, completely kind of different section, I think, than after the Gospels. I think Gospels is a section, then Acts, I think, it's its own section, and then the letters is another section, and then Revelation is another section. So you have kind of like these four main sections of the New Testament: the Gospels, Acts, the letters, and then Revelation. And so the second section, which is Acts, I put into two different weeks, and I think that the Gospels I have it into like four different weeks, 4 or 5. I forget exactly what it is, but the letters is week 46, 46, 47, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. So about 5 different weeks. And so what I have, what I've done is through the letters, I've kind of split up kind of a main theme or kind of an idea to think about Monday through Friday for each week, that the letter kind of goes over. And so for Monday, I have women not to teach, not to be teach, not to be over man, but remain silent. Women not to teach, to be over man, but remain silent. Not to teach or to be over man, but remain silent in the church. And so I think this is kind of, it's weird because some churches seem to have women pastors, and so I don't quite understand that. I don't understand the idea of pastors in general. So I think the pastor idea is a kind of it's a good idea, like to have a preacher. It's a good idea to have a pastor, but what a pastor does in the church, I think, is not ideal. And so to have a woman leader in the church when there really shouldn't be the leader of the church in each church that they have today, which takes the place of Christ, isn't ideal either. And to have a woman take that place of Christ is even more corrupted. And so I just think that that's kind of silly that they have this in the Bible. It seems to pretty obviously say this is not the move. And so there's a lot of things in the Bible that are kind of hard to understand exactly what God wants from us, what Christ wants from us. But I think this one's a pretty easy one to understand. But then you have the thing, okay, is women not to have power over man? And I think that, in an ideal situation, women can have power over children, but when a man becomes an adult, whatever the society justifies what that is, I don't think that a woman can have power over a man in a lot of situations, but I think a mom can pretty much always have power over her son. But when he becomes a man, does she still have power over him? I mean, in some ways, right? In some ways, not. But like if you have like a manager at work, should your manager be a woman? I think ideally, no. I think that a man should be a manager over men. I think women, if it's a job where women are there, then I think it probably should be separated between men and women as far as like managerial, like you're a manager over men and a woman is manager over other women. I think that's probably ideal as far as the Bible is concerned, but we don't live in an ideal world. And I think that just because you have a manager as a female, I don't think that you should quit your job or necessarily even bring any conflict about that situation. We don't live in an ideal world, but if we had an ideal situation that we could do, and this is something that you have a job and you can make it to women, or managers over women, and men are managers over men. And if you could do this, I think this would be ideal. But every situation, I don't think this can be done. And I don't think that's necessarily like an evil thing that's done if it's not done that way, because it seems to be that it seems to be for sure that the Bible says that a woman shouldn't usurp authority over man. I think this is in religious or in spiritual things, but the Bible does have prophets, right, that are women in the Old Testament. Are there prophets in the New Testament? There's prophets in the New Testament when Jesus was born, and I forget her name, but she was a prophet in the New Testament, and she talks to she talks to Joseph and Mary. But it says a woman should be taught. This is a woman's a prophet doesn't mean that she can speak in the church. She can still speak to her husband, and she can still speak to them, her dad, and the dad can convey the message to the church. And maybe she's a prophet, then she can talk to outside of the church. Doesn't mean she can't talk to people and prophesy outside of the church. But inside the church, when this is kind of things are going on, I don't think a woman should speak at the church. And I think this is just maybe this is just due kind of the organization and like things to be organized. And so like you're also like it talks about too, I think like if a prophet's gonna have the same prophet as another, like the same prophecy as another prophet, then just let one of the prophets speak. And you're not to speak in tongues unless somebody there can be listened. So these are just kind of like the rules of a church in order for things to be not chaotic and be orderly. And then but you can go on that for a lot and kind of the different things about that. But Tuesday I have not bound by the old law. And so, we are not bound by the old law anymore. And we're kind of the new law, which is like, because, you play semantics, right? Like a law, to have no law is a law in itself, right? Because you're saying that the law is that there is no law. But we're not bound by we're not bound by the Old Testament, the Jewish laws. And I think that's, because at least one of the reasons is because, you have a whole entire people that are under God's rule, like by themselves, right? They're away from everyone else. And so you have like this whole entire people, this whole entire culture and society that's different from all the other cultures in society. They're separated. And so you can have it where you're bound by the law because the law is part of the society, so everybody can kind of follow the same rules, like not doing any work on Saturday. But right now things are done on Saturday because you have the Gentiles doing stuff, or you have the non-believers doing stuff, and so you can't just like, and then since you have the society and you have the society where non-believers or paired with the believers, and you can't just like turn off all the policemen, all the ambulances, and everything on Saturday because people are still going to be working, and you can't just like not offer them services because they might change. And the God says he sends the rain on the just and the unjust. And so you can't just turn off everything because the whole entire culture, the whole entire society isn't separated from everyone else like what the Jewish people were. And so you can have these rules that are affected by everybody. And also, now that we've become older and we become like adults as far as like spiritually goes, then we're not like children. We have to obey like certain laws. We have the ability to discern. We have the ability of discernment a lot more than they used to, and so we can kind of make our own choices when it comes to these things, and we're not like having to like this set schedule of things. We can discern one ourselves when we need to come in for the nighttime, and how much we should eat, how much we should drink, and what things we can eat, and what things we can't drink, and we can have the ability to see, okay, this is bad for me, this is good for me, and everything is lawful for me, but not everything is beneficial for me. And so we have like this more responsibility, but we also have this more freedom that was when man was earlier. And so of course, when man is younger and is growing, he's going to have a lot of different rules and expectations and freedoms than he does when he gets older. And so now that man is an adult, the expectations and the freedoms and the rules are changed. And so that just would make sense, and like an obvious thing that would happen. So we're not bound by our children anymore. We become men in spiritual ways, and at least when it comes to like what's expected of us. And so Wednesday I have rules about marriage, and it seems to be that a man and a woman are married together, and once you're married, you're stuck with that person unless that person becomes an unbeliever. And once that person is an unbeliever, if they fall away from the church, then you're freed from them, or if they commit fornication. And so Jesus says, man is not to unmarry his wife except for fornication. But he doesn't say that in all the Gospels. He only says that, like, I think one of the Gospels. And And then Paul says, you're bound to your husband, you're bound to your wife. And he kind of expounds on this and what Jesus meant by this. And I don't know why some of the Gospels Jesus says, there's no exception. And then one of the Gospels says this is the exception. And I don't know why he doesn't say that unless a person is not a non-believer. And so maybe this is kind of something that was like obvious. And so if he wrote down everything that was super obvious to do, what man should and shouldn't do, then the Bible would be longer than it already is. And the Bible's already pretty long. And so I don't think that you need to like write down all this obvious things. And some things I think that Christ wants you to be able to come to him and have a relationship with him and kind of learn on your own and figure out on your own what he means by these things. Because he's speaking in parables a lot of times. Sometimes he's speaking in parables. Sometimes he's speaking not in parables. He's saying exactly what it is. And so you have that discernment to understand what Christ wants from you, and every relationship with Christ is different. So you have to build that relationship with Christ and Christ's truth, and build a relationship with God to understand what Christ means by these things, and have him in your life and be able to explain it to you, and so that it makes sense to you. Okay, and so Thursday I have charity, and charity, I think that is, I think I had charity another week, but that's okay. I think charity is supposed to be like the most important thing that the Bible has. You're supposed to do or not one of the most important things. Is charity suffereth long, is kind. Charity envieth not. Vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, does not behave unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoices not in iniquity, rejoices in the truth, believeth all things, beareth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Charity never faileth. And it talks about how you can have prophecy and you can speak of tongues and you can have all wisdom, all understanding, but if you have not charity, you're nothing. And charity, what it seems to be, what people put it into is charity is you're giving stuff away. And so this idea of charity is completely lost. And so a lot of Bibles will have different versions, and instead of using the word charity, they'll use love. Love, it does all these things. And so the word love and word charity are two different things. And so that's why one reason I really like the King James Version of the Bible is that you have these different versions of the Bible, and this is one thing they take away. They take away charity completely, and they replace it with love. But love is different than charity. So you have this idea, this word, and this way of being that's completely stripped from the doctrine that other Bibles do. But in the King James Version of the Bible, you have charity. And it's saying charity is the most important thing. You can have faith. There's faith, charity, and what is it? Faith, charity, and I think hope. Let me see exactly. I'll make sure I get it right. It's faith, charity. Faith, hope, and charity. Of all these things, the greatest thing is charity. And though I speak with the tongues of men and angels and have not charity, I become a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy, understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith that I could remove mountains and have not charity, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give myself to be burned and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, does not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoices not in iniquity, rejoices in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Charity never faileth, but whether there be prophecies, they shall fail, whether there be tongues, they shall cease, whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when that which is perfect is come, then that which is part shall be done away. When I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as I am known. And now abideth faith, hope, charity, and these three, but the greatest of these is charity. And so, charity is, like I said, completely taken out of the gospel and the other Bibles. It's the most important thing, and all you have these other things, but you have not charity, you're nothing. And so the Bible takes away the thing that if you don't have, you're nothing. And so the other versions of the Bible, and so that's one of the reasons I stick to the King James Version of the Bible. I think there's a few other things that the other Bibles do and other versions of the Bible that are just super incorrect and I think are super harmful. And I feel like that's one thing that happens, or one difficult, or one problem that arises when people use a different version than the King James Version of the Bible. And then Friday I have how to handle a situation, that's next week. If you are bought with a price, if you have a choice, be not servants of men. And so, when I was younger, and like obviously in the past, I thought being a slave was like the most horrible thing. Obviously, you could be. I think that's for most people's interpretation of slavery. It's the most horrible thing. It's a horrible thing that can be done now. In some situations in the past, or like it's been brought to my attention that there is some benefits of being a slave in certain situations. And so I think that some people like okay, well, and then people that have slaves still. I think there's people that do have slaves, and I think people that are under slavery, and I think people sympathize with the slave owners because there are some situations that seem to be at the surface that the slave can have some benefits. Being a slave and having slaves can be a benefit, but I think that the argument for this and it just completely wiped away because it says right here, "You're bought with a price. If you have a choice, be not servants of men." So you don't want to be a slave, and so the Bible says pretty strictly here: if the opportunity arises for freedom to be just despised, or freedom to be given, and freedom to be granted, and for you to get freedom, then you need to do it. And so this completely just kind of gets away from this idea argument of whether slavery is okay in any situation. And it seems to be the Bible is pretty muchly, if not completely, saying that no, slavery is not okay, or it's okay, but it's not ideal. And so if it can be done away with, then it needs to be done away with, both from the slave owner and the person that's the slave. So that's pretty much all I got. I know I'm talking pretty fast today, but there's a lot to put in there. And but at any rate, I hope everyone's doing pretty good. And like I said, I try to keep it around 15 minutes, and I've gone over that time. So hopefully everyone's doing okay. God bless and happy truth seeking.